So we're going to draw a box. Ooh, okay. And in that box, what I want to do is just draw a regular old bell curve. So this is going to represent a normal distribution in a population. So going back to bell curves and our discussion of how variation in a population can give you well, depending on the trait, so some very small individuals, some very large individuals, but the majority of individuals are going to be in the center of the bell curve. All right. So I'm going to make the center, I need a pencil sharpener. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Okay, oh, look at that. See, that baby just broke right out of there. Glorious. All right, we're gonna go with green then. All right, so there we have a normal bell curve. And what we want to illustrate in this box is the first one. And if we look at objective 8, the first one is stabilizing selection. That's STABILIZING, selection. Now, in stabilizing selection, what you have is pressure towards the middle. So when you have pressure towards the middle, that means that the mid-range or the middle, the moderate, the average, that's the word I'm looking for, form of a trait is selected for. So the normal bell curve is kind of obsolete because you have pressure to not be too big and pressure to not be too small. And so, or whatever the trait is, it doesn't have to be size, but the average form of the trait is being selected for. That there, ooh, I don't know. Here, I'll use this. This is pretty. My daughter contributed these colorful pencils for us. Okay, so the average form of the trait is selected for, and the extreme forms of the trait are selected against. And so over time, when we look at our bell curve for something like this, it becomes concentrated towards the middle. And I do know that there is movement in humans to become taller, but there is a problem with becoming too tall because the vascular system can't keep up with it, the heart can't keep up with it, and so therefore becoming too tall then leads to, some problems and maybe even death. On the other hand, being too short could be selected against, and so you have this pressure and there's like this moderate or medium form of tallness. That would be stabilizing selection. And we'll look for some more examples as we move along. All right, our next form of selection, I think I'll draw the box over here, is, let's read our objectives. Look at objective 8, and it says directional selection. Directional selection is the type of selection where you're moving in, not squeezing in, but moving to one side or the other. So let's just draw a regular old bell curve. Now, it's not as good as my last one, but oh well. We've got this regular bell curve where you have the variation in the population. It just fits a normal pattern. And then we're going to add to that directional selection. And in directional selection, you have movement of the trait in, I should have done that differently. Oh well, we have movement of a trait in a direction. And in this case, the direction is towards one extreme. In this case, the larger extreme. So we've got movement, yes, towards a trait. So this is directional. Directional selection. And so this is an extreme form of the trait is selected for. So a wonderful example of this is, of course, like the giraffe's neck, because the giraffe's neck gets longer over time, or at least the population of giraffes end up with longer necks. In fact, the giraffes have those little knobby things on their heads, and they have those ears, and put some eyes on this giraffe. We've got the giraffe's neck becomes longer over time because it's something that leads to a better survival for the species. Whew, this is tricky. There you go, got some nose there. La, 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 la. I don't think I've ever drawn a giraffe before, so that was fun. One should always try to have fun when they're homeschooling, right? Okay, so there's our giraffe with our long neck, because a long neck is going to help it reach those higher leaves. And that's not how you draw a tree, April. La, la. If it didn't have those higher leaves, it would not be very successful. All right, anyway, let's move on. So directional selection is where an extreme form of the trait is selected for. Finally, our last form of selection is one that I kind of love, because it can cause rapid and immediate speciation. It's a quick form of speciation. Whoops, because of the disruption. So we can go ahead and draw the average, the average bell curve here. We'll just sort of fix whatever craziness I have there. And then in disruptive selection, an extreme form of a trait is being selected for. So that means you're going to have an extreme form of the trait selected for. And these guys in the middle don't get to mate. They don't get to have offspring. And so you can imagine, if you can't have offspring, you can't pass on your genes, and so therefore those genes are no longer part of the gene pool, et cetera, et cetera. It's kind of an issue. So extreme forms of the trait are selected for, not against. So it's the opposite of the stabilizing selection. So this is called disruptive selection. And disruptive selection is where the average form of a trait is selected against. And so you have movement of the trait outwards in opposite directions. And if this takes place over a geographic area, what will happen is these guys over here won't mate with these guys over here. If they do, they're not going to have viable offspring. And same with these guys. And so because of that, this disruptive selection can cause speciation, because these guys are mating with their, ones that are like them, And these guys are mating with ones that are like them and the ones in the middle. And so you can just see that it automatically creates like a division in the gene pool, and they move off in different directions. And so that causes rapid speciation. It's pretty interesting. Okay, so, oh, and my example of that is these things called lippets that are on rocks, sort of by the ocean. So even though it looks like a bell curve, I have a rock here. And on the rock are these little lippets. And lippets are, I guess they're like little shell creatures. And there's some lippets that live high up on the rock, and there's some lippets that live down below or near the water level on the rock. And then we have these seagulls that come, oops, that pencil, oh, gotta get a pencil sharpener. I hope I can find one in the house. Okay, the ones that live down below the water level are darker color because they're wet all the time. And that darker color allows them to camouflage into the darker color of the rock down below or near the water level, because the water's keeping everything a darker color. But up high, you've got a lighter colored rock because it's dry from the sun. And so as the sun rolls in and keeps that dry, these guys here also need to take on the color of the rock that's higher up here. And so they try to stay nice and light in color. Of course, it's allele frequencies. They're not choosing that. They're born with those colors. And the lipids that are here in the middle, between the two of them, these guys are selected against because they're neither light nor dark. They're somewhere in between. And so that makes them prey to ocean-going birds like seagulls and stuff. So we're gonna throw a seagull or two in here to show we have a predator that is going to see these more readily and pick them off. These guys are kind of invisible. These guys are kind of invisible. And so this average form of the trait, let's say these are the heterozygotes, these guys are going to pass away, but eventually you're making two distinct gene pools because these guys are separated by these losers in the middle. And these ones will be selected for, these ones will be selected for, but these guys will most certainly be selected against. And so that's the story of the lipid. Okay, so that's summarized. That's everything I wanted to talk about today. I'm going to add Objective 8 to a Google form, and I want you to go ahead and fill that out and answer the questions. You can use Google to look for an example. I want you to do a little bit of searching on your own, looking for an example of stabilizing selection, looking for an example of directional selection, and look for an example of disruptive selection on your own. I'm going to attach a video that I want you to watch as well. And if you haven't watched the Island Fox video yet, please do that and answer the questions, because I want to refer to the Island Fox because there is some selection going on there that would be nice to refer to. So that's it for today and tomorrow. And so get that information filled out and turned in as best you can. And I appreciate you. Oh, look, there's the kitten. There she is. Look, she's right there. All right. Anyway, so let's get to work on that, and I will check in with you to see how you're doing. Thank you.